Time calculation, Greenwich GMT or Universal Time Coordinated UTC. Philippians chapter 1 verse 3. Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind let each esteem other better than themselves. Isaiah chapter 1 verse 18. Come now, and let us reason together, saith the Lord. Section 1. Time calculation, a brief history. Greenwich Mean Time or GMT. The Royal Observatory Greenwich in England is the home of Greenwich Mean Time or GMT. But what is GMT and why is it so important? What does GMT mean? Greenwich Mean Time is the yearly average or mean of the time each day when the sun crosses the prime meridian at the Royal Observatory Greenwich. Essentially, mean time is clock time rather than solar astronomical time. Solar time varies throughout the year as the time interval between the sun crossing a set meridian line changes. But each day measured by a clock has the same length, equal to the average or mean length of a solar day. It is a way of standardizing and regularizing time so we can all know exactly what time it is for our or anyone's location. Today, GMT is reckoned from one midnight to the next. How did Greenwich Mean Time begin? It was not until the invention of the pendulum clock in the 1650s that it was possible to work out the relationship between mean or clock time and solar time. John Flamsteed came up with the formula for converting solar time to mean time and published a set of conversion tables in the early 1670s. Soon after, he was appointed as the first Astronomer Royal and moved into the new Royal Observatory in Greenwich. Here, he had the best pendulum clocks installed and set them to the local time. This was Greenwich Mean Time, or the average time when the sun crossed the meridian at Greenwich. At first, though, Greenwich time was only really important to astronomers. For further reading, we give you the link for your perusal. Section 1. Time calculation, a brief lesson. Lines of longitude, prime meridian, lines of latitude. The prime meridian is an imaginary line on a map of Earth. It is the starting point for the measuring system called longitude. Longitude is a system of imaginary north-south lines called meridians. The Earth is a spinning sphere or ball. The center of the spin is a line that is called the Earth's axis. The axis meets the Earth's surface at 2 points, the North Pole and the South Pole. Each meridian runs between the North Pole and the South Pole, including the meridian or the prime meridian, which is indicated here in red. Meridians are used to measure distance in degrees east or west of the prime meridian. The prime meridian is 0 longitude. The 180th meridian is the line of longitude that is exactly opposite the prime meridian. It is 180-degree longitude. Lines of the longitude east of the prime meridian are numbered from 1 to 179 east. Lines of longitude west of the prime meridian are numbered from 1 to 179 west. Other lines on the globe are called lines of latitude. They are used to describe position north or south of the equator, and the equator is the center line here. So north or south of the equator are the lines of latitude. The equator is halfway between the North Pole and the South Pole. Lines of latitude circle the Earth parallel to the equator. So while the line of longitude are vertical on the globe, as you can see here, the line of latitude, which are parallel with the equator, are actually horizontal, and we see that the lines of latitude circle the Earth parallel to the equator. For this reason, they are also called parallels. The distance between each parallel is also measured in degrees. Together, the line of latitude, horizontal with the equator, and the line of longitude, which are vertical along the meridian line, they can be describing the location of any place on Earth. For example, the city of Paris, France, is located 48.8566 degrees north and 2.3522 degrees east. Sydney Harbour in Australia is 33.8523 degrees south and 151.2108 degrees east. We submit to you the link for your perusal. Section 1, Time Calculation, a brief history of Greenwich longitude. Greenwich, GMT, and the quest for longitude. In the 1700s, the fifth astronomer royal, Neville Maskelyne, brought Greenwich Mean Time to a wider audience. In 1767, Maskelyne introduced the Nautical Almanac as part of the great 18th century quest to determine longitude. These were tables of lunar distance data based on observations at Greenwich and using GMT as a time standard. This data enabled navigators to find their position at sea. GMT was also crucial to the other great solution to the longitude problem, represented by John Harrison's famous timekeepers. By the mid-1850s, almost all public clocks in Britain were set to Greenwich Mean Time, and it finally became Britain's legal standard time in 1880. In 1884, the Greenwich meridian was recommended as the prime meridian of the world. There were two main reasons for this. The first was that the United States of America had already chosen Greenwich as the basis for its own national time zone system. The second was that in the late 19th century, 72% of the world's commerce depended on sea charts, which used Greenwich as the prime meridian. The recommendation was based on the argument that naming Greenwich as longitude 0 degrees would be of advantage to the largest number of people. The prime meridian at Greenwich, therefore, became the center of the world time and the basis for the global system of time zones. The Airy Transit Circle, the telescope, became the telescope that would define the prime meridian of the world. Astronomer Royal George Biddle Airy designed it, and it is located at the Royal Observatory, Greenwich. It was recommended that the meridian line would indicate 0 degree longitude. Therefore, this also became the start of the Universal Day. And we give you the link for your perusal to further your study. Section 1, Time Calculation, a brief history of Greenwich Shepherd Gate Clock. The Shepherd Gate Clock can be seen at the gates to the Royal Observatory. It was the first clock ever to show Greenwich Mean Time directly to the public. It is a slave clock connected to the Shepherd Master Clock, which was installed at the Royal Observatory in 1852. From that time until 1893, the Shepherd Master Clock was the heart of Britain's time system. Its time was sent by telegraph wires to London, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Dublin, Belfast, and many other cities. By 1866, Time signals were also sent from the clock to Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, via the new transatlantic submarine cable. In terms of the distribution of accurate time into everyday life, it is one of the most important clocks ever made. The first thing you notice about the clock is that it has 24 hours on its face, rather than the usual 12 hours. That means that at 12 noon, the hour hand is pointing straight down rather than straight up. The clock originally indicated astronomical time in which the counting of the 24 hours of each day starts at noon. The clock was changed in the 20th century to indicate Greenwich Mean Time, in which the counting of the 24 hours of each day starts at midnight. It continues to show Greenwich Mean Time and is not adjusted for British summertime. Please view the link for your perusal in order to obtain further information. Section 2, Time Calculation, a brief lesson of chemistry and history on Universal Time Coordinated, or UTC, measured by a cesium clock. Earth's rotation defines the length of a day. Modern timekeeping defines a day as the sum of 24 hours, but that is not entirely correct. The Earth's rotation is not constant, so in terms of solar time, most days are a little longer or shorter than that. The moon is very gradually slowing the Earth's rotation because of friction produced by tides. Over the course of a century, the length of a day increases by a couple of milliseconds, where 1 millisecond equals 0.001 seconds. Within this general trend, however, there is fluctuation. Sometimes the Earth spins a bit faster, sometimes a bit slower. Recently, according to this research, our planet has been speeding up a little, making for slightly shorter days. A more accurate way to calculate time is through an atomic clock made of cesium, as was done here in 1955. A cesium beam atomic clock, or cesium beam frequency standard, is a device that uses as a reference the exact frequency of the microwave spectral line emitted by atoms of the metallic element cesium, in particular its isotope of atomic weight 133. And here we have the element of cesium as found in the periodic table of elements, with a nucleus of 55 protons and 78 neutrons and 6 shells of electrons, of which the number 6 has 1 electron. The integral of frequency is time. So this frequency, 9,192,631,770 Hertz, Hertz representing cycles per second, provides the fundamental unit of time, which may thus be measured by cesium clocks. Today, cesium clocks measure frequency with an accuracy of from 2 to 3 parts in 10 to the 14, or 2 multiplied by 10 power 14, meaning 0.0002 Hertz. This corresponds to a time measurement accuracy of 2 nanoseconds per day, or 1 second in 1.4 million years. This is not having anything to do with evolution. It's simply the evaluation of this equation here, 2 multiplied by 10 power 14 is represented here. It is the most accurate realization of a unit that mankind has yet achieved. A cesium clock operates by exposing cesium atoms to microwaves until they vibrate at one of their resonant frequencies and then counting the corresponding cycles as a measure of time. We invite you to visit this link for your perusal in order to understand further what is presented here with the cesium clock. Section 3. Time calculation. Replacement of method to calculate time from Greenwich time GMT to Coordinated Universal Time UTC. Coordinated Universal Time replaced Greenwich Mean Time as the world standard for time in 1972. UTC is based on atomic measurements while GMT is based on Earth's rotation. Greenwich Mean Time is still the standard time for the prime meridian, 0 longitude, and civil time in the UK when daylight saving time is not in use. At the 1884 International Meridian Conference held in Washington, D.C. in the United States of America, local mean solar time at the Royal Observatory, Greenwich in England, was chosen to define the universal day. It started down from 0 hours at mean midnight. This agreed with civil Greenwich Mean Time used in Great Britain since 1847. In contrast, astronomical GMT began at mean noon, 12 hours after mean midnight of the same date until the 1st of January 1925, whereas nautical GMT began at mean noon, 12 hours before mean midnight of the same date, at least until 1805 in the British Navy. It persisted much longer elsewhere because it was mentioned at the 1884 conference. In 1884, the Greenwich meridian was used for 2/3 of all charts and maps as their prime meridian. In 1928, the term Universal Time, or UT, was introduced by the International Astronomical Union, IAU, to refer to GMT with the day starting at midnight. Until the 1950s, broadcast time signals were based on UT and hence on the rotation of the Earth. And we offer the link for your perusal. Section 3. Time calculation. Today, Universal Time Coordinated, UTC, and the cesium atomic clock, a more accurate way to calculate time. The frequency involved is that of the energy absorbed from the incident photons when they excite the outermost electron in a cesium atom to jump or transition from a lower to a higher orbit. According to quantum theory, atoms can only exist in certain discrete energy states depending on what orbits about their nuclei are occupied by their electrons. Different transitions are possible. Those in question refer to a change in the electron and nuclear spin energy level of the lowest set of orbits called the ground state. Cesium is the best choice of atom for such a measurement because all of its 55 electrons but the outermost are confined to orbits in stable shelves of electromagnetic force. Thus, the outermost electron is not disturbed much by the others, which would be the one here that we find on the 6th shell. The cesium atoms are kept in a very good vacuum of about 10 trillionths of an atmosphere so that the cesium atoms are little affected by other particles. All this means that they radiate in a narrow spectral line whose wavelength or frequency can be accurately determined. The U.S. Naval Observatory operates about 70 such cesium clocks, as well as other precision clocks like hydrogen masers in 18 volts, whose temperature and usually humidity are closely controlled in order to minimize perturbations by their environment. The time measurements are made by devices called time interval counters that compare each clock's time against that one master clock whose frequency is steered to match its time to the average of the other clocks. This time is the observatory's measure of the atomic time called Coordinated Universal Time, or UTC. Some cesium clocks are transported to remote locations in order to synchronize other clocks. We supply for you the links of this research for your perusal. Section 3. Time calculation, the atomic clock, Greenwich time GMT to Coordinated Universal Time UTC. Atomic clocks are a type of clock that uses certain resonance frequencies of atom, usually cesium or rubidium, to keep time with extreme accuracy. The electronic components of atomic clocks are regulated by the frequency of the microwave electromagnetic radiation, which we find here on the spectrum going from the radio to the microwave. They are very long wavelength with very low frequency and very low energy. Only when this radiation is maintained at a highly specific frequency will it induce the quantum transition or energy change of the cesium or rubidium atoms. In an atomic clock, these quantum transitions are observed and maintained in the feedback loop that trims the frequency of the electromagnetic radiation, like the recurrent events in other types of clocks. These waves are then counted. So as we see here, these are the waves created, very long waves, especially the microwave, but then it goes on and as it shrinks, as the microwaves become shorter, then this is when you get a higher frequency and a higher energy, such as infrared, ultraviolet, X-ray, and gamma ray. So the longer the wave, the lower the energy and frequency, but the shorter the wave, the higher your frequency and energy. So the microwave are the one to which the atom of cesium is responding to. In 1967, the 13th General Conference on Weights and Measures redefined the second, the unit of time in the International System of Units, in terms of the cesium standard so as to equal the second of ephemeris time. The conference defined the second as the duration of 9 billion, as we saw earlier, 192,631,770 periods of the radiation corresponding to the transition between the two hyperfine levels of the ground state of the cesium 133 atom. And we offer here again the link for your perusal. Section 4, Time Calculation, Today, Cesium Production and Other Usages. Cesium world production. Although cesium is much less abundant than the other alkali metals, it is still more common than elements like arsenic, iodine, and uranium. Few cesium minerals are known. Pollucite is the main. They are silicate magmas cooled from granites. World production of cesium compounds is just 20 tons per year, coming mainly from the Bernick Lake in Canada, with a little from Zimbabwe and Southwest Africa. Cesium and GPS. The cesium is so constant in the speed it vibrates that this extremely accurate time allows satellites to accurately determine where someone is based on GPS data and how long it will take someone to get to somewhere else. We know that each GPS satellite contains multiple atomic clocks that contribute very precise time data to the GPS signal. And GPS receivers decode this signal effectively, synchronizing each receiver to the atomic clock. And every single GPS themselves is home to a family of atomic clocks, typically 4, and they derive their time from cesium or rubidium atoms. Very fascinating. Health effect of cesium. Each component of the diet contributes potassium evenly to the diet. However, almost half of cesium is estimated to be contributed by meat, eggs, and milk products. Thus, the daily intake of cesium varies greatly depending on the dietary intake of this component. Humans may be exposed to cesium by breathing, drinking, or eating. In air, the level of cesium are generally low, but radioactive cesium has been detected at some level in surface water and in many types of foods. And these, of course, are caused because of accident, not because it's in the food naturally at that high level. The amount of cesium in food and drinks depend upon the emission of radioactive cesium through nuclear power plants, mainly through accident. Just like this accident that have not occurred since, we're told, the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. People that work in the nuclear power industry may be exposed to higher levels of cesium, but many precautionary measurements can be taken to prevent this. So cesium, when it is extracted, can be actually melted just like gold and silver, and it will be seen into a liquid form. And again, the GPS are related directly to cesium, and especially how extremely accurate it gives time to the satellite. As well, the food can be actually calculated as far as the amount of cesium that it possesses. More specifically, in this case, it usually is checked because there may have been radioactive cesium emission that is higher than you would want to. And these food that now are affected and they cannot be consumed because they can be dangerous. But this is not because of cesium, it's because of the way the nuclear plant sometimes will cause certain accident like this. And we recommend that you read those links that we propose to you in order to continue these studies. Session 4, time calculation today from health to environment. Cesium-137 is used in small amounts for calibration of radiation detection equipment such as Geiger-Müller counters. In large amounts, CS-137 is used in medical radiation therapy devices for treating cancer. It is not very likely that people experience health effects that can be related to cesium itself. When contact with radioactive cesium occurs, which is highly unlikely, a person can experience cell damage due to radiation of the cesium particles. Due to this, effects such as nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and bleeding may occur. When the exposure lasts a long time, people may even lose consciousness. Coma or even death may then follow. How serious the effects are depends upon the resistance of individual persons and the duration of exposure and the concentration the person is exposed to. Exposure to such a large amount could come from the mishandling of a strong industrial source of CS-137, a nuclear detonation, or a major nuclear accident. Large amounts of CS-137 are not found in the environment under normal circumstances. Environmental effects of cesium. Cesium occurs naturally in the environment mainly from erosion and weathering of rocks and minerals. It is also released into the air, water, and soil through mining and milling of ores. Radioactive isotopes of cesium may be released into the air by nuclear power plants and during nuclear accidents and nuclear weapons testing. Note, however, that while cesium-55 can be used to create clocks and GPS, cesium-137 can also kill. So is hydrogen, a component of water, and the main atom used to make the hydrogen bomb. Please make sure to visit those links for further information. Section 5, time calculation and observation. Methods to ascertain time, Bible and History, the Millerites Method. Greenwich Time GMT versus Universal Time Coordinated CTU in the light of October 22nd, 1844. The purpose of this research was to evaluate the difference between these two methods of time calculation developed over the centuries, reaching out to the Millerites and to our time. Which methods did William Miller and his associates use to ascertain the Great Day of Atonement in 1844? Which methods should we use today? Extensive studies of the sheer word of prophecy is recommended. Study the Great Controversy, chapters 18 to 22. The method by which William Miller ascertained the October 22nd, 1844 date as the Great Day of Atonement is well explained in chapter 18 of the Great Controversy. A study of the whole Bible is the method we should all use in order to understand the Word of God, and especially the prophecies and synchronism and chronology. The Great Controversy, page 324. I could but regard the chronological portions of the Bible as being as much a portion of the Word of God and as much entitled to our serious consideration as any other portion of the Scriptures. I therefore felt that in endeavoring to comprehend what God had in His mercy seen fit to reveal to us, I had no right to pass over the prophetic periods such as Daniel chapter 8 verse 14 and chapter 9 verses 24 to 27. Studies of history and events confirming prophecy valid for his time and for us today, such as the Great Lisbon earthquake related to 1798, the falling of the stars, and the Ottoman Empire's sign of upcoming fall in his days. And we should do the same today. Study history and the event confirming prophecy today as we see wars and rumors of wars, economy falling, and many, many other events such as rebellions and such as also a decadent government. Calculation of the October 22nd, 1844 based on Greenwich Time, GMT. The Greenwich Mean Time method of calculation was in use at the time of William Miller, and the U.S. Naval Observatory was established in 1830. The U.S. Naval Observatory is one of the oldest scientific agencies in the country. It was established in 1830 as the depot of charts and instruments. Its primary mission was, and is still today, to care for the U.S. Navy's chronometers, charts, and other navigational equipment. The writings of the Christian Jewish scholar Joseph Samuel C.F. Ray exerted a marked influence upon Snow and his associates in fixing upon October 22, 1844. And this calculation is based on Greenwich time calculation. We recommend that you peruse this link demonstrating the firm platform and the solid foundation of 1844, as well as the way to calculate it. Conclusion to the matter in the case of Greenwich GMT versus Universal Time Coordinated UTC. A matter of choice. Evidence number 1. Human beings created in the image of their maker were given by rights the freedom of choice. This freedom cannot be impeached by vain philosophy or totalitarian methods enforcing rules, more specifically when it comes to the study of the Word of God. Evidence number 2, the principles of true education are clearly expressed in Isaiah chapter 28 verses 9 to 13. For precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little. And we know that God teaches by the enunciation of principles or universal laws, and the Holy Spirit, which comes by faith, enlightens the senses that we may grasp the illustrations of these laws in the physical world. Evidence number 3, we have attempted in our research titled The Firm Platform calculation and observation of biblical time to demonstrate that time is illustrated by the Creator through the science of astronomy and can be both calculated and observed. In this present research, we have confirmed that the Greenwich GMT method was the one the Millerites used to ascertain October 22, 1844. We have also demonstrated that the Greenwich method based on the Earth's rotation has been replaced in 1972 by the atomic clock cesium accuracy in most countries around the world as the method to calculate time with an accuracy of 10 power 14 compared to the method of longitude and latitude used by the Greenwich method. After calculating the October 22nd date of 1844 with the data of USNO based on the atomic clock cesium accuracy, the conclusion was clear. The results are the same when reckoning 1844. Conclusion: the scientific value of the Universal Time Coordinated UTC based on the atomic clock of cesium accuracy used by USNO is the method we have chosen to ascertain the biblical calendar for 2020 to 2030 at 144,000teachers.org. Thus far, our data have proven accurate, and if opponents apply the method used to ascertain October 22, 1844 of the lunisolar barley harvest new moon on crescent and confirmed by biblical, astronomical, chronological, historical, and spirit of prophecy principle, we will be glad to hear them out in writings, avoiding thus the unchristian methods of bullying, character attacks, and plain unacceptable abuse. We rest our case. Come now, and let us reason together, saith the Lord. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18.